First, Katie, Kylie, hey girl. Thank you all so much. You all have been so lovely to work with, and thank you for this opportunity. So before I kind of start, I had this moment where I was just like, oh my gosh, I get to have a platform to talk about Montessori where people have to listen. So just so you know, we're going to go there. And if you have any questions, because I am a teacher, obviously I want this to be informative and educational, feel free to raise your hand, and I'm happy to answer them, especially when we get into the chunk about Montessori. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, awesome. Okay, so let's get started. So we're going to talk about spirituality, and we're going to talk, I'm going to move this mic here. We are going to talk about spirituality, and we're going to talk about Montessori. So hopefully this is going to work. Yes. Okay, great. So first things first, who am I? So I figured let's get really existential to get us started since we're talking about spirituality, right? No, I don't want to get existential today. That is not what we're talking about. In fact, this was a genuine question I had. After they approached me to talk about spirituality, I was like, okay, who am I as an educator to talk about spirituality? And I had this conversation with a good friend as I'm over here like, I don't know if I can do this, am I good enough? And he just said, you're a human being, and that is enough. And I was like, of course. And that as human beings, we all have our own spiritual experience, our own spiritual perspective for simply being human beings. So as we're kind of like getting started, I would love to just take, I'm not trying to stall, but take like 30 seconds to really reflect for yourself, how would you define spirituality? Like, let's put words to it because we're going to be talking about it for a while, and I want us just to kind of get on the same page. Cool? So just take 30 seconds, take in the sounds of downtown, and really hear what is San Antonio and spirituality. So I'm going to give you, like I said, like 30 seconds. How would you define spirituality? Okay, y'all are doing it. All right, got a good class. Y'all are active. Wonderful. So does anyone want to share or feel like, I feel like I have a good working definition? Rocio, what you think? What is spirituality to you? Connection to the intangible. I love that, Rocio. Communion, community, got you in there, togetherness with that co. Anybody else? So all I really wanted to take away from this is that we all probably have a different definition, right? So whenever I don't know something, I go to Google, and what I found was like, well, what's a good, like, kind of universal definition of spirituality that we can work off of for the sake of this conversation today? So what Google said, this was literally the top search, was spirituality is an individual practice and has to do with having a sense of peace and purpose. And so we're really going to hone in on that, especially in relation to Montessori. And then process of developing beliefs around the meaning of life and connection, Rocio, with others, okay? So this is my dad. This is my dad and me. This is middle school Ashley. So middle school Ashley was very much a know-it-all, and also very intrigued and curious about spirituality and God and religion and things like that. Fortunately, my parents are amazing, and we had a really open household. We would always have discussions about spirituality and religion and things like that. So on Friday evenings when I was in middle school, we would often go and have dinner at a little Mexican restaurant over off Nacogdoches Road, the part of town that we lived in. And this one particular evening, I remember it so vividly because it was such a pivotal part in my spiritual journey, if you will. We go into this restaurant and we sit down in this back booth where we often sit down. And I sit down and we get the menus, but we all know what we're already going to order because we do this like every week. And I say, I'm atheist. And so my mom and dad are like, okay. And nothing really comes of it. And so middle school Ashley, right? So I'm like, I just don't get what the big deal is. I think we're born, we live, we die, we're buried. Like, I don't get it. I don't get what the big deal is. And so then again, another pause. And then my dad says, you know, Ash, I'm really sad to hear that you don't think that there's something outside of yourself. So I was like, okay. So I took the information and walked away, went home, thought about it, and then I came back and said, okay, I'm not atheist, I'm agnostic. And they're like, okay, fine, we're agnostic. So that is where I hung my spiritual hat for years, in large part because I just kind of didn't care. And also because I was like, I don't know. Do you know? I don't know. Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. I don't know. So we're just gonna leave it here. Until my Montessori teacher training. So this is a doodle from my Montessori teacher training. This is the seed of life. And it's actually the first geometry lesson that children receive because it's based on the simplest shape, which is a circle, because a circle is a single line. So it's a really easy lesson to give to children because when they're starting to use protractors, I'm sure we're familiar with like the metal protractor, you put the pencil in there. It's kind of like there's a lot of coordination that has to take place. So it's the easiest shape that they can make. So we talk about the simplest circle, and then we encourage them to be creative. So how many different shapes can you make with this single shape of a circle? And inevitably, they find this, which is also in spiritual practices often, like I said, the seed of life. So during my Montessori training, I just fell in love with this idea. Oh my gosh, the seed of life, and everything's interconnected. And if you connect it all together, it makes this beautiful flower. Not only myself, but my best friend during the training. And so we went and got tattoos. So I actually have this tattoo in order to represent this deep connection that I had with this shape and this spiritual training and experience. But I keep referencing Montessori, but I haven't told you what it is, right? So we're gonna go there. So what is Montessori? So I'm gonna go through this somewhat briefly, but Montessori is basically a educational pedagogy or approach that takes place in a prepared environment. So everything in the classroom is completely curated for children of whatever age it may be. So when you go into the cute little like 3-year-old classroom, all the shelves are way down here and everything's tiny and little and all the glasses are small because we're curating it for people of that size, right? So prepared environment, so everything has its place. Everything is beautiful and organized. It's a multi-age classroom, so for many reasons. So it's typically over a span of about 3 years, which provides children with the opportunity to both be leaders in the classroom and to be learning. It also gives them opportunities to be able to learn from each other. So that if I'm a 3rd year and I'm on to division of fractions, I can work with a 1st year who is just learning division, whole number division. And so you again perceive the opportunity to be able to learn with and from each other and to be both teacher and student. On that note, teachers are not teachers the way that we typically think of them. Your teachers are guides. The teacher is not the fountain of knowledge and information. The child is not an empty vessel. Rather, the child is full of curiosity and wonder and capability and imagination, and it is the role of the educator to guide the child to find their inner purpose, if you will. It moves from concrete to abstract. So every concept, every lesson begins with something that is tangible and hands-on, and typically, literally, has a physical component that some Montessori teacher has created and crafted after going and picking up a bunch of materials to be able to represent a concept or task. The best example is the math curriculum, where every aspect of math has a physical component, which for me, I am not a math mind, that is not me. And so the opportunity to be able to learn, for example, the number 12 is not just 12 because it's after 11. It's 12 because it is a unit of 10 and just 2 units of individual single units. But I learned that by playing with all these different pieces that represent units, tens, hundreds, et cetera, et cetera. It is also independent based on the concept that we all learn at different paces and we all have different interests. And so by being in a classroom that prepares me where I'm able to follow that interest at my own pace, Both increases my confidence. So again, not a math person, but in a Montessori environment, that's okay, because I get to stay on that concept until I'm ready to move on to the next one. Holistic, as we've talked about, hands-on, that's one of the main things. Social emotional is embedded within everything that's done. So Montessori herself, she was amazing. So she was actually the first female doctor in Italy. So she was a doctor and she was a scientist. So all of the concept, the pedagogy that she created was based on observation. So she literally spent hours just sitting and watching children. And I have to tell you, I had to do that in my training. It is so hard to be in a room of children and literally just sit there and they're coming up to you and they're talking to you, and it's kind of this like Montessori culture where you just have to look at the child and then look beyond. Like you can't engage with them in any way, which is so hard to do if a kid's like, can I touch, can I move, can I do? No, I'm here observing you. But through her observations, she came up with the planes of development. And there's actually 4, but I'm just going to talk about the first 2 because that's where my certification and expertise lies. So the first one, for those of you with little kids, you will identify with this. This is the absorbent mind, which is actually, she has a book called The Absorbent Mind, where the child is literally taking in everything in their environment. And once they have language acquired, which happens really quickly if you've ever tried to learn a second language. They get it real quick, right? But so what is that? What is that? What is that? Let me touch it. What is that? How can I take in as much information as possible to understand the world around me, right? How can I engage? Shortly thereafter, around the age of 6, enters the phase of development that I love. This is their reasoning mind. And it's really marked by a shift in that question of what to why and how. So great examples like, I don't want to know what color is the sky blue. I want to know why is the sky blue. So that gets super interesting because that's where you get the cool questions where you're like, why is the sky blue? I don't know. Let's go find out. So Montessori, based on her let me back up one second. So if you've watched any of the curriculum and content that I create, that is why you see this all over the screen. But why? But how? It's for me to mirror what a child, where their rationale and their line of thinking is going to occur naturally, and to encourage them to continue to maintain that curiosity. Asking those questions of why and how are going to drive you for the rest of your life as you find your purpose and your place. So how did she do it? So Montessori created what is called the cosmic curriculum. And I'm going to read the definition because these are her words, and so I think it's best said by her. So the cosmic curriculum is a means to relate all academic subjects together to demonstrate the oneness of all creation, and most importantly, place the child's primary orientation to life firmly in the universe. And this is my deeper understanding of it, for only in understanding the interconnectedness of the whole can they find their role within it. So in all these questions of what and why and how and trying to figure everything out, they're just wanting to know, and where do I fit in? So how does she do it? But how? So she does this through a content area that she calls the universe. And the universe is broken up into what is called the 5 great lessons. So it's kind of that big whole to parts. So let me give you the biggest picture first before we walk down that spiral staircase of hearing this information again at a more detailed level. So the 5 great lessons, I'll make sure I get these right, is the coming of the universe, the coming of life, the coming of humans, the coming of language, and the coming of math. So if you'll notice, these are your big subject areas that they're going to tackle within the classroom on a daily and or weekly basis. So in this is my favorite lesson. So once we've had that universe lesson, so the universe has been created, and we actually share these as stories, including the Big Bang, because we're like, we think that it started this way, but we aren't 100% sure. So what do you think happened? So it's again that imagination piece. But after we've established that the universe itself exists, well, stars have to exist. And stars are made of elements. So how does that happen? So like any Montessori lesson, it's a really special experience because you are oftentimes one-on-one. And so I am giving you all of my attention as I share this magical story with you. And I've prepared all of these physical components that we're going to share together that are really beautiful. In this one, this is my very crude drawing from my teaching experience. So you had to draw every single Montessori lesson, which after a while you're like, I'm just going to draw as fast as I can because there's so many to draw. So this is crude, I know it, please don't judge. So on this one, you lay out this big, long black mat. And then you have a bunch of different circles. These are each individual circles of different sizes and obviously different colors. And each color represents a different element. So you begin with an empty black mat. None of these other colors are here. And you would lay down the first one. It's like the first element that is forged in a star is hydrogen. And then you move on and say that, and then there's pressure and heat and pressure and heat. And then we lay down the hydrogen and the pressure and heat results in the formation of helium. And then we keep going. And so with every single new element that is formed with pressure and heat, we have a new one that builds and builds. And so as you're telling this story, you are also building anticipation. We have more pressure and heat, and there's another element, there's another element. And in the very end, it explodes. And all of the elements are shot throughout the entire universe. And you throw glitter on the kid, and the kid's like, oh my gosh. And then you say, all of those elements that were forged in the stars, they're in you too. And then the kid looks back at you and they've got glitter on their face and their eyes are really wide and they're like, I'm made of the stars? I'm like, yes, you are made of stars. And it's just this like beautiful moment. And for me, it's like, God, like what deeper sense of connection can you have to the stars? Like literally the first things that were formed in our universe, that those are in us too. So this is that example of a connection piece. Cosmic tasks. So cosmic tasks is another really big part of her pedagogy that I'm so grateful for. So I have a big picture of an ant up here. Sweet, sweet ants. So on the Montessori school that I worked at, there were always ants. And after we gave the refracting light with a magnifying glass lesson, inevitably, I had a couple of boys come in, steal the magnifying glasses, go outside, and start trying to turn ants on fire. Like every single year. And I'm like, okay, it's time to give the cosmic task lesson on ants. So the purpose of the cosmic task is to show that everything has a purpose. Every single thing has a purpose. So like we come in, we're like, remember children, everything has a purpose. So what is the purpose of ants? They don't know, or else they wouldn't be killing it, right? So then they go on a deep dive into the existence of ants and how they work, and then they learn about hive mentality, and then all of a sudden they're just like, oh my gosh, ants are the coolest thing in the world. And no more ants die on the playground. Every year, every year. So it gives that development opportunity to develop deep empathy for every living thing. So the other thing it provides is not only does everything outside here have a purpose, but so do you. And it is the role of the educator in this environment to create a space to encourage that child to learn what it feels like to follow their curiosity, to follow their heart, and to find their cosmic task or purpose. So this is an example. This is Yoda. Gagey, one of my students drew this for me when he was in 4th grade. The kid was obviously an artist. He's at RISD right now, killing it in the art program on a full ride. So Gagey would spend all day long drawing Marvel, big, muscular, like action heroes all day long, which is great. Except that, like, Gagey, if you can't write a complete sentence, you can't get into school. So we're going to have to find a balance here. So we sat down with Gage, knowing that this is his drive, knowing that this is his passion, and created a curriculum for him based on, okay, Gage, how about first let's learn some anatomy and physiology so that your triceps aren't bigger than your biceps and it doesn't look so awkward? And every time that you draw a new muscle group, I need you to write in complete sentences what that muscle group does and how they work together. So I'm going to be judging you not on the content, but on your punctuation. So we're able to embed his language skills through the lens of what was obviously Gage's passion, and still provide him with the opportunity to continue to follow his path towards his purpose or his cosmic task. So this is what we're doing with Blooming with Birdie. So the company that I have, this is from our Be Social Day. I think some of you all were there. We are simply trying to provide children with the opportunity to fall in love and to see something within our interconnected universe that they can really engage with the hope that in finding those senses of what that is and what's happening outside of me, to find peace within themselves, knowing that I have a place in the universe and that I too am a part of this whole big system. So I'm going to end with my dad. So I didn't tell you the whole story in the beginning. So on that day, he did not end by saying how, he was sad for me, that I didn't really believe in something outside of myself. He went on to say his beliefs, which are that there is a unifying force or an energy that connects all of us. So for me to not acknowledge that means that I'm not really a part of it. And so in doing this talk and looking back as how I've defined spirituality, I was like, oh, without that, I wouldn't have that sense of purpose or that connection that ultimately leads to a sense of peace. And so I'm sorry, Dad, that it took me going to Montessori training to hear what you said. You were right. I believe you and I love you. But for that, I am so grateful. And I'm grateful for my Montessori experience. I'm grateful for my amazing parents. I love y'all. Oh, Mama. I love y'all so much. And for the sense of peace that I feel in having the great fortune to have had the life and the experience to be able to find my cosmic task, to share with other children and other people how to find their cosmic task. So that's what I got. Thank you.